All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. For those that I don't know, I'm Stephanie Rennie. I'm the Director of Operations at the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce. And I know this is a big week for many of you out there with the reopening beginning this week, as of yesterday. Throughout the whole COVID pandemic, we've been here to be your go-to source of information and driving a support local campaign, encouraging our community to shop local and support local whenever possible. And Aaron from Strive kindly brought this awesome idea to us to showcase businesses through this Explore Local webinar series. And today we're going to learn a little bit about running and feature the Runner's Den, and how to fit your shoes and take care of yourself. And hopefully everyone's getting outside a little bit more since we can't be getting together in groups and going to the gym. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to introduce himself and our feature for today. Aaron?
Thank you, Stephanie. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Aaron Binstock. I'm a chiropractor and co-owner of Strive Health and Performance. And we're just located at Austin and Nelson in Coquitlam, just across the street from the newer Safeway. So aside from chiropractic, we do also offer registered massage therapy, physiotherapy, acupuncture, IMS. We do active rehab with kinesiologists, and we also specialize in concussion management. And as Stephanie mentioned, exciting news, we are opening as well. So as of Monday, we are back in business. We got a fun little video on YouTube our team put together. You can check that out if you want. But yeah, and again, I do need to thank the Chamber, because when I brought this idea to them right away, they're just like, how can we help? How can we be involved? And they've done a ton of work in helping me put this all together. So I really appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in or watching the recorded version, because you guys are supporting local, and we need it more than ever. So thank you so much. And hopefully you guys will be able to learn a little bit today. So our featured guest is Paul from the Runner's Den, which is located in Newport Village in Port Moody. And so Paul, just introduce yourself, give a quick little introduction about what your store is about, and then we'll get into the talk.
Sure, thanks Aaron. Great to be here with you guys. This is something new for me, so it's a neat venture for sure. But my wife and I, Penny, opened the store here. Now it'll be 20 years in September, and just saw a great community and opportunity to come and be a part of the community, help people in terms of continuing with their lifestyles of exercise and being a part of that. So what we do in our business is help people select the right footwear to keep them mechanically aligned, if you will, and in order to continue to chase dreams, whether it's run your first 5K or run an ultra marathon. So at the end of the day, we feel like it's really important that not only we're a business in the community, but we're partners with people in a health and wellness format. So we partner with people like yourself to make sure that our customers and your patients are connected and have an understanding that when they see you, they can come and see us, and there's a connection that we understand what you're trying to get them to do and what they're looking for. So really feel like we've created a nice business here in Newport Village that people feel like they can come no matter what level athlete they are.
That's awesome. And speaking of being kind and generous, one thing I do need to mention is Paul is generously donating, or giving away, I should say, $100 gift certificate to the Runner's Den, which we're going to draw right at the end of the session here. And you do have to be present to win it. So stay tuned to the end. And we're also going to give away a physiotherapy assessment and treatment as well. So, I mean, in BC, so many of us run, which is amazing. And I think over this pandemic, more and more people have taken it up just to stay healthy, be fit, just do something other than be stuck at home, which is amazing. But what's also comes with that is a lot of us are experiencing some pain or injuries now or in the past. So we're here today to try to help you prevent those injuries. And before we can fully kind of take those tips and understand, okay, all I got to do is this to not get injured, it is important to get a little bit of an understanding as to why we get injured and kind of how that happens. So we're going to start it off by, there are two really kind of main categories of injuries. So the first one is an acute injury. That's more of, you know, we're running along, let's say in a trail, and you happen to step on a rock that you didn't see and you twist your ankle, okay? 9 times out of 10, regardless of how many strengthening exercises you've been doing, you're probably going to sprain your ankle. So those acute injuries are not that preventable for the most part. So we want to focus on what can we try to prevent. And the second category is what we call overuse injuries, okay? Also, don't worry about reading the whiteboard. I'm aware probably nobody can read that. That's more just for me to check my notes and have a good flow. And I do also want to say, I believe Stephanie's going to unmute everyone, because I do want you guys to chime in and ask questions right away. If you have it, you can type it in the chat box and she'll ask them for you. If there does seem to be a little bit of feedback, then we'll just mute everyone, we'll let you know, and then you can unmute yourself once Stephanie sees your question, okay? So feel free to ask away. So let's get back to the injuries here, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Pardon me?
So
Are we? Okay.
So unmuting all didn't go so smooth. We're going to keep everyone muted.
So we'll keep them muted, and then type your question in the chat box, and then Stephanie will either ask me out loud or she can unmute you to ask, and we can have dialogue. So how do these overuse injuries happen? In a nutshell, it's when the load exceeds the tissue or the muscle's ability to handle that load. So basically, are you asking the muscle to do more than it's capable of? Because once you exceed that threshold, that muscle is going to get injured. Okay, so that's kind of in a nutshell. But there are many reasons as to why this happens, and we're not going to cover all of them. We're just going to cover the main things, and then how do we address that so that it doesn't happen? Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is tight and weak muscles. Okay, when you expose a muscle to the same type of movement over and over, it's going to get tight, which is normal. It's going to happen, but to what degree? And if a muscle gets tight, it's going to get weak. And then if a muscle is weak, it's prone to injury. Okay, so we need to find a way. How do we stop that negative chain from happening? Because if it gets weak, not only is it prone to injury, but what other things would happen? So let's take an example. This isn't running related, but if someone has a weak shoulder and they're trying to reach up and grab a plate and they can only lift this high, and maybe it's also because there's tightness here, they can't physically get further. Well, what they'll do is they'll hike their shoulder up like this to get higher. So that's called compensation. So the body will find a way to figure out how to achieve that movement you're trying to do by using other muscles. But again, let's circle back. Well, what happens now if I keep doing this? Well, now these muscles are going to get really tight and weak and prone to injury. So let's go back to running here. If we know that there's compensation, I want someone to throw in the chat here, type a guess. What would be the main muscle that is most important in trying to determine whether we're going to have proper running technique? So throw it out there in the chat. Someone give an answer out there. Your quads, your hamstrings, core muscles. Those are all great answers, but not quite what I'm looking for. You're so close. It's in between all those ones. Glutes. Yes, Terry. Excellent. Thank you. So your gluteal muscles, okay? Now, for those who don't know, okay, we're talking about these muscles here, all right? The brain is really important too, yes. So your glute muscles, why are they important, okay? Can you just angle down a little bit? So your glutes are really going to determine how the rest of your leg moves. Come down even more. Okay, so the second part that I talked about, I'm going to get up in 1 second. The second factor in injury prevention is biomechanics. So how does your body move? Okay, now our glutes control how the whole lower leg works. So if my muscles are weak, what's going to happen is when I step down, my leg kind of turns in like this, okay? And can you just take this right there, even further, like tilt it down? Yeah. So what you can see happening here, if my knee comes in, also my arch right in through here is going to collapse downwards, okay? And then you can come back up. So biomechanics, or how we move, is very important, because if that keeps happening every time you step or stride, you're going to put a lot of extra strain in through some of those muscles and joints. And again, that extra strain and stress is eventually going to lead to injury or pain. And we're going to get into some of those injuries a little later on to be specific and make a bit more sense about it. But I'm going to give another example as to how your biomechanics, or how you move when you run, how does that play a role? So if anyone has ever experienced low back pain when they run, okay? If you have tight hip flexors, that's going to result in some low back pain when you run. And why? Okay? When we're running, part of our stride is we have to try to extend the hip. Can you tilt downwards a bit? Yeah. So I want to extend the hip, right? And then I come back. But if this muscle is very tight, when I try to go back, I can't go back that far. So again, my body is now going to compensate, and instead I'm going to extend my lower back, all right? And so basically what's happening in the lower back, okay, is every stride, it's like this. That doesn't look fun. It doesn't go quite that bad, but your joints are digging into each other, and eventually that's going to cause you pain. So we need to get rid of, that tightness. And how do we do that? Okay, we're going to get into those stretches later on, but that's one way that we need to fix that. Okay, another thing that you can do to help with the biomechanics is something called cadence. And for those of you who don't know what cadence is, it's how many steps are you taking per minute. Now, throw this in the chat. Does anyone have a guess as to how many steps per minute we want to see? Like, what is optimal? 140. Good guess. A little bit higher. 200. So a little bit lower. Okay, so that's good. So we're looking for about 160 to 180. And we may be asking ourselves, well, why is how many steps I take really that important? Well, if you think about it, so just come down again. So if I was to run really slow, it'd be look like this. So my cadence is going to be very low because I'm not going to be able to take that many steps. I'm not going to be able to take that many steps if I'm going that slow. But for every moment that my foot is touching the ground, forces from the ground are going up into my foot, which travels into the muscles, the joints, and that's putting more strain in through there. So the longer that's happening, the more insult or load or stress is going into those muscles, and the greater chance that they're going to tire out or eventually get injured. So if we increase the cadence, so that means that when we're increasing the cadence, that is less time that our foot is striking the ground, and again, less forces that are going through there. So that's one thing you can try on your own. And you can download an app. There's many cadence apps on your phones that you can get. And you just plug your headphones in and you can set it to 150, let's say, just to start. And you listen to the beat, and that's how you want to try to get your feet to strike the ground. I even had, for example, a gentleman who had an Achilles injury, and on assessment, he was telling me about he only gets it when he runs, but the pain. So I had him go on the treadmill. He ran, his cadence was low, and he was getting the pain. And I just increased his cadence, and immediately his pain was gone. Now, it didn't fix the injury right away, but it just goes to show that it can have a major effect on how the body is going to respond or be injured. I do want to say one thing. If you are, let's say, at 140, okay, so you can test out your cadence on this app as well. But if you're at 140, don't try to jump to 160 in your first attempt. Only go up by about an increment of 10 until you get a good rhythm and you've done it a few times, and then go up by 10 again. Okay, so with biomechanics, a few things that we can do to fix. We address the cadence. We got to stretch to get rid of tightness. We can also get treatment by your massage therapist, physiotherapist, chiropractor at Strive Health and Performance, or anyone you already see. And then we're going to do some strengthening exercises because we need to address some strength areas, okay, which that'll happen later. Another thing that is really important with injuries is footwear. So we know Paul is the expert here. So he's going to tell us in a second here, how do you know what is the best shoe for you? Because it's going to be different for everyone, and he'll tell you that as well. And we can ask questions like, how often should you be switching your shoes out? Okay, so Paul, can you just kind of shed some light on how they're supposed to know what shoe they should be getting?
Yeah, that's a great question, and sort of the beauty of why we're still around and being able to be in business is we're able to help decipher. But these days with social distancing, it's a lot of us are trying to figure things out on our own. So there's a number of great ways that we can sort of start the process, at least to try and figure out what our feet need and what our bodies need. And one of the first things obviously is looking at what we have currently for our footwear. A lot of people will, especially with the last couple of months, dig into the closet and pull out, an old pair of shoes, because now the only option is to either go for a hike or go for a run. So pulling out those shoes and checking what condition those shoes are in. So I always like to grab a shoe, and if somebody's coming in the store checking their shoe, one of the first things we can do is a sort of a flex test with the shoe. We always want the shoe to have mid-foot integrity. So when we grab the shoe, it shouldn't just fold up like an accordion. So the key is grab the shoe, give it a flex. So flexing torsionally this way, and then the other part of the equation is grabbing the shoe and giving it a bend this way as well. So the shoe always needs to flex where our foot flexes, which is through the forefoot. Again, it shouldn't fold up like a wet sandwich and right in the middle of the shoe. So that's certainly key with checking out your footwear. One of the other things, if you're looking at your shoes sometimes, is turning the shoe over and taking a look at the bottom of the shoe. We can look at the wear pattern of a shoe, and that can give us a lot of indications. Typically, if we're heel striking, we'll see a heel strike on the outside for most people. If it's traveling more to the inside of the shoe, we know that we've got some potential mechanical issues that we need to either send to yourself, Aaron, to get checked out, but also looking at the type of shoe that you have might be needing a little bit more support. What we really focus on is what's going on in the forefoot to indicate sort of, is the shoe working, not working. So we look for wear either centrally, if it's wearing to the inside of the shoe or off to that big toe joint excessively, we might be needing a little bit more support in the shoe, or vice versa. If we're on the outside edge of the shoe or way on the outside, maybe that shoe is giving me a little bit too much structure in our shoes. So definitely a couple of quick things we can do from home. Look at our shoes, check them out. For us, obviously, we'll pump the store. We are now available at least to come in and ask the question. You're always welcome. We encourage people to actually bring in their old shoes for us to be able to have a look at that and then make an assessment and then share that information. And I think that's one of the keys that we always do is it's a passage of information, being able to take that information and learn about yourself as an athlete and what you might be looking for.
So for those who are running more frequently, do you ever recommend having like 2 pairs of shoes in terms of the ability to, because when they go for a run, they're compressing the sole X amount, I guess. Obviously it's going to vary from person to person. And do we want to allow a certain amount of time for that to go back to its original form?
Yeah, great question, Aaron, for sure. I mean, obviously if the pocketbook allows us to have a couple of shoes on the go, that's fantastic. our what I would consider our hardcore runners, quite often they'll have 2 or 3 different shoes for different types of workouts. But our manufacturers will all tell us it's about 36 hours between wears for that foam to come back to its original state. So 3 times your body weight when you're running. So we're compressing, we're putting a lot of force into the shoe. And obviously it's microscopic on a very small level, the amount of compression. But as we go, if we do back-to-back runs, or as we go and do longer runs, it just compresses the shoe down. So typically if you're going and you're able to throw a second pair of shoes in the mix, you're able to alternate. We say if you have 2 relatively new shoes, you get the life of 3 pairs of shoes. So it's really, really helpful from that standpoint to protect the joints, as well as typically if they're not exactly the same shoe, but under the same mechanics in terms of being the right shoe for you. It also just changes those muscle groups ever so slightly just to change things up for you. And that can help just creating change for the body and keeping it working and getting stronger.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm going to touch on that when I talk about running routine. I want to at least address a little bit the issue. I mean, I know it was a hot topic a little bit ago, but the whole minimalist shoe, and I think a lot of people have, at least before, maybe not as much right now, like, oh, that's the new thing, that's the best because that's the way we were kind of came into the world without wearing shoes. Can you touch on that a little bit? And again, I know you can't address every person's needs because we are different, but for anyone out there that's listening that may think that minimalist is best for everyone.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we saw that trend probably, well, it's now 10 years where, the book Born to Run, everybody kind of hopped on and thought, well, this is the answer for me. Forgetting that we've been in shoes for, in my case, now 50 years, and I'm going to strip everything away. So with anything we step into something new, we need to do it gradually. So for minimal, some people can get to the point where they can run with a minimal shoe. Some people, it may just be a good walking shoe. Some people may walk in it and it's just not enough support for them. So we obviously do it on an individual basis. We do like the fact that a minimal shoe can help strengthen the foot, but it's really with guidance in terms of how you would utilize it. What we also find is, if you take your regular training shoe and replace it with a minimal shoe, and then go out and do everything you normally do with that minimal shoe, that's where we run into troubles as well. So usually if we're saying you're going to try to go to a more minimal shoe, do it when you're not necessarily training for something, and also have another pair of shoes that you work for you, that you can slowly, gradually work them together just to see whether your body can adapt and address some of the stress loads that you'll run into with a low or a 0 drop shoe for sure. So it's that tough question. It may work for you, but understanding how you would introduce it, and then obviously recognize the signs that maybe it's not working or need to do more stretching. Most runners are horrible for the amount of stretching that we currently do, and then you throw that in and you're reducing that, you're lowering your heel height, you're putting more force on the Achilles and calf. So you have to be prepared if you're making a change to understand what that change looks like.
Great answer. So we have a question, just going back to the cadence here. The person just wanted to know, so should I speed up my running, or, should I be working more on stride length when it comes to the cadence? Again, it kind of depends a little bit on what your goal is as a runner, but this is why I really like the app, because if you're trying to get technical with the, I got to increase my stride length by how much and how fast, you can kind of overthink it. So if you have the app, it's really good because it's kind of mindless. You hear the beat and you just have to hit the beat with your strides. Now, of course, at first it's going to feel kind of weird, but you're eventually going to get a rhythm down, and then it becomes natural for you. So it's a great question, but I wouldn't focus so much on trying to know how fast how your stride length should be. Yes, in general, you would shorten that stride up because you can get quicker. but it also depends what your goals are. But overall, I would say make sure you download the app and just make it as mindless for you as possible. Another question we had is, runners are stubborn. Yes, they are. At what point should you come in if you feel pain? So pain is a whole other topic in itself, but prevention is always great. You can't go wrong with that. If you're someone that's training for a race, especially like a half marathon, marathon or more, even if it's a 10K because you haven't really ran at all, I would recommend getting some sort of maintenance or prevention treatment during your training program, because you obviously want to prevent if you can. If you're just someone who's running randomly every once in a while, you're not training for anything, you don't have to come in for treatment at the first sign of pain, because again, when you're trying new things, your body is going to adapt, but also say, hey, what's going on? And the pain is sometimes just a warning signal, like this is new, not necessarily did you do damage. So the advice I would give you if you're in that state is you kind of have to listen to the pain. If you just feel a little bit of soreness or tension one time and you go out for a run the next time and it's not painful again, or it's less of a soreness than it was the time before, I would say you don't need to come in for treatment, right? But if you're experiencing that, the more you run, the more often you're feeling that pain, or the pain is getting more intense and it's lasting into the next day or the one after that, then I would say definitely come in for treatment and listen to your therapist. And it doesn't mean you have to stop running, but you just may have to alter what you're doing. So if you're running 3 days a week, well, maybe we cut back to 2 days a week, or maybe if you're going 5K, we do 2K, right? So we always want to encourage you to still keep with your activity, because it's important that we do that, but we will have to modify what you're doing so that we find a routine that doesn't create that painful response. So it's not quite a black or white answer, but I would pay attention to the fact if you are experiencing pain that is increasing, or it's just not going every time you run, or 2 or 3 times in a row, it's that same pain, then come in. But not at the first sign of, I feel something coming on, that must mean an actual injury. I hope that answered your question. If not, at the end, you can reach out to me and we can discuss a little bit more. There was one about what strengthening exercises, what I use for strengthening your glutes. We will cover that in a bit. Hamstrings are super tight. What can I do to relieve them? I'll address that one quickly now. So you can use a foam roller. Do you mind grabbing the camera here? So on your own, one thing you can do is use the foam roller if you have one. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, and you're just gonna go up and down. Again, how much pressure or body weight you put on that foam roller is totally dependent on your comfort level. You don't want it to be very painful, but it should be a little bit of discomfort, okay? You want to feel like something is happening, but maybe a 3 to 4 out of 10 at the most. So you can do that. You can do a hamstring stretch. Okay, there's lots of ways to do it. There isn't really a huge science behind it, to be perfectly honest. If you feel a stretch happening here, you're getting a stretch there. There are other ways people like to do it. I will caution you about the tight hamstring though. If this is something that you've had for a little while and you also are stretching, you're foam rolling, and that hamstring tightness is just not going away, you might have a low back issue. Because going back to this compensation, if your low back is weak, the body is going to tighten up the muscles, hamstrings being one of them, as a way to try to stiffen and protect it. So until you strengthen that lower back, your hamstrings will still stay tight. So just keep that in mind. If you try to implement these things and your tightness doesn't go away, you might have to look at your lower back. A style/brand. How do you know what style/brand I think this is a shoe question for you, Paul. How do you know what style/brand or price point is right?
Yeah, great question for sure. I mean, price is not always indicative of the right shoe for you. I think, you know, people sometimes get caught up going one way or the other, either that the most expensive shoe is going to be the best shoe for you. And I think that comes down to, again, mechanics and getting somebody to be able to assess and make sure that the right type of support is under your foot. On the flip side, you can always find value in, once you know that shoe that you should be in. The models obviously always change over, typically yearly, sometimes sooner than that. So you can quite often find that shoe that you're loving and been wearing. And as the models change over, and you can always ask in your favorite specialty run store when that happens, and then you see those shoes go on sale. So when a shoe is on sale, it doesn't mean to say it's a bad shoe. It just happens to be on sale in some cases. The challenge is within a brand, even if we take a major footwear brand like New Balance, is if you don't know what the model is that you wear, a New Balance isn't always a New Balance isn't always a New Balance. So it's understanding and asking the questions to know what are those features within the shoe that are right for me. What I do find is over years, as people do run and come back in the store, is certain brands work better for different foot types, as well as people find that with that in mind is that the lasts or the molds that the companies build their shoes on are all slightly different. And therefore we do quite often have an affinity for an ASICS shoe or a New Balance shoe, and we keep coming back to them, and we don't always know why, but the molds that the companies all build their shoes on are all slightly different. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, dollars doesn't always equate to the right shoe for you at the end of the day. So it's, again, everybody's a little bit different. So I can't say buy a New Balance at $160 and that's going to be the right shoe for everybody. But yeah, the price range will vary out there for sure. So that's part of the reason why we, again, we're here to be a sounding board to kind of break and decipher what's in the marketplace. And certainly the shoes that we keep in stock in the store have certain parameters that we feel are important in order to keep people safe and being able to keep running.
Thanks for answering that. And I do just want to point out, for the very reason you just said, is I would avoid going to Sport Check and Foot Locker. I mean, if you're looking for just potential fashion statements, but if we're looking for an actual running shoe, you know, you want to go to people like Paul because they understand your foot and your mechanics and what you actually need, whereas those other people don't have specific training in that. So it does make a huge difference. I do have a question about, you know, so if the bottom of someone's feet hurt while they run, how can they be avoided, and basically what does it mean? Hard to say 100% because I haven't seen you, but I will contact you and we can chat over the phone and we can have a little bit more of a discussion. But typically, I'll say the most common thing is you have your plantar fascia here. So if your pain is right here, which most people would get the pain right here, then that's probably your plantar fascia. And I will address that. Actually, let's just address it right now since we're talking about it. But again, this goes back to it's an overuse injury. So if this is your foot, okay, most people have an arch, some don't, but our arch heights are a little bit different. But when we step down, our foot will do something like this. So as it's doing that, it's stretching out the plantar fascia. Now, if we have some of those weaknesses or altered mechanics, remember when I showed you that my knee was going in and my foot was collapsing inwards? When you get those types of scenarios, you're doing way more of that stretching, and it's just tugging and tugging and tugging. And at some point, again, the tissue just can't handle it. And that's when you start to get that irritation or pain. How do we prevent it? Again, everyone's not gonna be the exact same, right? One thing for sure is you would want some actual treatment. So things that we do is active release technique. It's kind of like massage, but a little bit different. But basically we dig in and break up all the tension because you might have tight calves. And if you have a tight calf, then that's going to put pressure, more strain in through the bottom of your foot as well. on our assessment, we would also find out where are you weak. And we're going to show you some exercises to do. And I'll also give you an exercise that you can do for your foot. Okay, don't let me forget about that. All right, so I'll give you an exercise for that. But a lot of it, in terms of fixing it, is going to be, again, it's different on your situation and how it happened. But for sure, some strengthening, addressing any tight muscles that you have that are causing more strain in that area. And then the actual treatment, and again, sorry, strengthening and potentially how you're moving. Participants asking how long this is going. Okay, I would say another 15 minutes. So let's get into, I just want to quickly touch on routine, okay? So your running routine. How often you're running, how far you're running, what types, are you doing hills, right? That is going to play a role as to whether you're going to get injured or not. Everything, as Paul already mentioned in one of his statements there, it needs to be gradual, right? So when you're changing from one kind of shoe to the other kind of shoe, it's got to be a gradual change. Same thing in, you can't just never run and all of a sudden 5 days a week run 5K. Your body is not going to like you. So you have to gradually increase how you're going to run. Another thing is, if you're always running the same route, chances are you're going to get sore or some sort of injury because you're always stressing the same muscles, same muscles. If you like to run on the road, that's perfectly fine. But I would always recommend at least once a week, run on the trail. Because when you run in the trail, it's never the same step. And even though your feet and your legs and your calves are being used, different parts of those muscles are being used and different amount of strain. So I would say always run at least one trail run during the week, okay? So let's get into some strengthening exercises. If we have time, we'll talk about specific injuries, okay? Because this is what we're here for. So the first one is for one of your glute muscles in through here, okay? So I would recommend doing it up against a wall because it stops you from cheating, or at least it eliminates your ability to cheat that much. So everything, it's important that this is flat against the wall, okay? Because there's 3 things the body will try to do to cheat. So if you have a weak muscle, it will try to cheat, okay? So I just have my bottom leg bent, my top leg is straight, and my pelvis or bum is flat against the wall. So thing number 1 to look out for is this will slide away from the wall. Don't let that happen, okay? And so what you're gonna do is you're just gonna raise your leg about 40 degrees. It doesn't have to be exact, we just don't want you doing this. So just nice and slow. And I would do 3 sets of 10, okay? So the second thing to look out for is don't let your heel come off the wall. So you might see something like this, all right? We don't want that. You don't have to push into the wall. It's just we want to keep this leg back. Don't let it come forward because you'll start to feel it in the front. And the third thing, excuse me, is don't let your foot turn towards the ceiling. You can turn it inwards if you want, but at least parallel to the ground. And when you're doing the exercise, you should feel it in here, okay? That should get tired. So 3 sets of 10, that's more of a basic exercise to start. You might feel a burn, that's okay. If you are getting sloppy with the form because it's burning, then just stop at 7 reps or 8 reps. Just do what is comfortable for you, but don't force it if your form is not proper because then it kind of defeats the purpose. So just do 10, you can flip to the other side, do 10, 3 sets. So that's number 1. A little more advanced exercise. This way. So you can do this. Sorry, we'll cross that. And then, so it's okay. You can just focus here down. So just go to a stair, all right? And this leg just hangs, all right? And all I'm gonna do is a little bit of a squat and come back up. So one thing, yeah, can you come this way? So I want you to, you can hold on to something because I want you to sit back, right? I don't really want to see a lot of this because then you're going to get a lot of strain in through here and in through here, okay? So really try to sit back, have a good amount of the weight through your heel, okay? Not through the front of your foot. If you feel it through the front, that means you're going to get a lot of stress in through here. We're trying to work your glute, the one closest to the wall. So just go slow. You don't have to go far down. You don't even have to touch the ground. Just do this, okay? And I would exaggerate squeezing your bum muscles while you're doing this because we talked about weakness. Sometimes it's just that those muscles aren't working, okay? Because we've detrained them, not on purpose. It just happens through what we do with our daily life. So squeeze them, practice squeezing them because we want them to work. Same thing, I would try 3 sets of 10, both sides, okay? If you are feeling extra rowdy and you want to do it off of, can you tilt down a little bit? Okay, I'll just do a side profile here. Okay, again, just go really slow and up, right? Again, my weight is through my heel, squeezing my glutes, okay? And then this is a great one you should do in front of the mirror because if we see this happening, we don't want that, right? It's okay if you kind of do this, well, correct it and then keep going, okay? 3 sets of 10, all right? Another one that's really good is what we call a single leg deadlift. Come up a little bit more. Yeah, perfect. All right. So I just have a slight bend in my knee. Okay. All of the rotation is going to happen through here. Okay. So my back stays straight. All right. And I'm just going to go forward through my hips. And I come back up. Again, really emphasize squeezing your bum here, okay? Push the heel into the ground to propel you back up. Very important. Again, you should feel this all in here. I will say you will get some contraction in through the quads. That's okay, but you should always feel more of it in here, okay? The gentleman who asked about your plantar fascia, so what you would want to do is, one thing you can do is just take a towel, have a seat. I don't have a towel handy, nor does anyone want to see my feet, but if you had a towel, okay, put it on the ground. If this is your foot, just scrunch it up and release it. Slow scrunching up and release it, okay? And then a great stretch, I won't take my sock off, okay? But can you come in and look at the ground? So get the toe up to the, yeah, okay? And then you can bring your heel, or sorry, your knee closer to the wall. So you're getting a big stretch in there, okay? And you can come off, all right? With stretches, you can hold it. I would hold them for generally a minute, minute and a half, which can seem long, but that's what's most effective. So let's see. Oh, for Paul. We have one for Paul. Question. On the selection of shoes besides the flex test, what other features would you recommend?
For figuring out what, like assessing our own shoes kind of thing, or I guess?
I would assume so. Or maybe, I guess, if you're looking for a shoe on your own, perhaps, because I know this person doesn't live in BC. So maybe if they're going, what other, you know, little tests would they look for to see that the shoe has good durability or stability?
Yeah, so I at the end of the day, if we know what kind of mechanics you have going on, if you have requirements for a little bit more structure or support in your shoe, you would look at the shoe on the inside or the medial side. And if you were needing a little bit more support mechanically for your arches, on the inside of the shoe or in through the arch at the midsole here, you would typically find it be either darker colored, or you would find some sort of plastic device that would be in here that you wouldn't find on the lateral side or on the outside edge. And all that is going to structurally take your foot and give it a little bit of support. It's not going to slow down the rate of movement, it's going to slow down the rate of movement. It's not going to stop the movement altogether, but it's going to slow it down, keep the foot in better alignment, and therefore keeping knees and hips in alignment. So looking for that little bit of support. And honestly, the biggest thing is if you're somewhere else and you can find somebody that understands footwear, that's going to be the most important, because honestly, otherwise you're kind of guessing if you are doing it online to try and figure out what that shoe is going to be right for your feet, unless you've been buying the same shoe year after year and you know it works. And even then, unfortunately, when they change the model, it can change. It may not seem like a big change, but it can be enough that it would change how your body reacts with the shoe. And that's, again, another reason why you want to talk to sort of a shoe specialist, if you will, that understands all the mechanics within every shoe as they come out. So I'm not sure if that helps, but checking the shoe to make sure it has the support that you might need, and you can check that on the medial side of the shoe for sure.
One more question for you, Paul. Do you only carry running shoes, or can you special order? Someone's son has his eyes on Air Jordan.
We can special order. Unfortunately, when it comes to Jordan shoes, they're very exclusive as to who gets to sell those. So unfortunately, I typically can't get my hands on them unless I can pull a favor from my Nike sales rep. So we can always try. You can fire me an email and we can always try, as long as you know style, color, and size, and then we can do our best for sure.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up pretty quick because I don't want to keep people waiting here. So if you do have any questions about specific injuries, you can email me at drbinstock@strivehealthandperformance.ca. I'll put up some information in a second. We can chat on the phone and talk about injuries. We'll just set up a time. I will just address one just to kind of bring it all home of stuff that we talked about, because a lot of people will have general knee pain. So we're looking at a knee here. Okay, so this is your right knee. And if the pain is kind of in through here, that's really where we get, so that we call this patellofemoral pain syndrome. Can you just show kind of my leg for a second again? So again, if we have the proper or improper mechanics where our knee keeps doing this, all right, the knee is going in, but what happens is, come on back up. Normally, this is your kneecap here, okay? It slides nicely in a groove here, right? So when you bend like this, it slides nicely. Now this knee is not gonna bend the way I just did, but if it does this, this kneecap slides away a little bit. Now it doesn't completely come out because you'd be in a lot of pain, okay? But it doesn't slide nicely in the groove. It slides kind of out. I'm not sure if people can see that, but it rubs and rubs in through the joint itself. So enough of that is going to cause irritation, and that's where we get a lot of that pain. So another thing that we can do is we provide some kinesio tape, which helps with the tracking of the kneecap. So it keeps it in that groove nice, so it avoids that irritation. But again, we would need to address that weakness in through there, okay? So again, we can talk injuries. Please email me. I'd love to talk about this stuff. Thanks for all the questions. That was amazing. Although we didn't get to cover the injuries, it's really great when people stay engaged. So thank you for that. Paul, thank you so much for coming on, letting us know your wisdom here. If you guys are looking for running shoes, please go to the Runner's Den. I know they're not doing it quite yet because of the restrictions, but at some point they do run running clinics as well. So it's a great way to basically start running safely, or if you want to get into training for a marathon or something like that, whenever those start up again, contact Paul, and they have a great running group there. Okay, so I'm just gonna share his info quickly so that if anyone wants to contact him, you know where to look. All right, so it's runnersden.ca. Here's the phone number. Is that a coffee in there or a frothy beer?
Your call. I could do both.
All right. And before we do the draw, I'm just going to share last information about our webinar series here. So if you are enjoying this or you have enjoyed it and you want to check out more, we are still doing them. So you can go to our website there. Also, if you follow us, strive_health on Twitter, we give updates as well. You can also follow the Chamber and you can go to their website to register for these webinars as well. Just go to the events page. Again, thanks to the Chamber. And lastly, we're open. We're ready to treat you guys, hopefully get you better. And in general, if you have any questions, you can still just call us and we'll arrange a time to talk to you over the phone and talk you through some stuff. So don't be shy. And let's get this draw going. Oh, I should say also, sorry. Next week, we have Jamie Banfield. He is an interior designer, and he's basically going to tell us and give us tricks and tips as to how to turn our kitchen into this designer kitchen without having to go out and get anything. So it's going to be pretty cool, pretty unique. So hopefully you guys register for that. That's next Wednesday. All right, let's get to the draw. The winner of the $100 is Trevor Schmidt here. Oh, Trevor's going to be upset about that. Nathan Head. Yes? All right. So Nathan and Paul, I will connect you guys so you can figure out how to exchange that. And the winner of the physiotherapy assessment / treatment at Strive is Ahmad Sharifi. Excuse me. Is he here or she? Yes? Okay, perfect. So I will reach out to you as well. Okay, so that is it for today. Thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate the support. Hope to see you next week. Have a great week and weekend eventually. All right. Thanks again, Chamber, for helping us out.